The days passed. Jungkook didn't reply. Taehyung didn't stop trying. Every morning, there was a message. Sometimes just, "Good morning." Sometimes longer, "I walked past that bakery you love today. It reminded me of you." Jungkook read them all, but never answered. It wasn't about punishing Taehyung. It was about protecting himself. One evening, Jungkook sat on the rooftop of Jimin's building, legs crossed, hood pulled over his head. The city lights blurred through the mist in his eyes. He wasn't sure if he was crying because he missed Taehyung, or because he was finally learning to live without him. Down below, leaning against his car, Taehyung stood in the street, looking up at the building. He didn't know which window was Jungkook's, but he stood there anyway. For hours. The air between them was full of unsent words, unspoken apologies, and the heavy ache of two people who loved each other in all the wrong ways. Later that night, Jungkook finally picked up his phone. He typed. Deleted. Typed again. "Jungkook, don't wait outside. I'm not ready to see you." Taehyung read it instantly. And though the words cut deep, he smiled. Because it was the first message from Jungkook in weeks. The message burned in Taehyung's mind. "Don't wait outside. I'm not ready to see you. Not ready. Not never. Just, not yet." It was hope, thin and fragile, but it was enough to keep him standing in the rain for a little longer. Taehyung sighed. He started leaving little things at Jimin's doorstep, never knocking, never trying to force a meeting. A paper bag of warm bread from Jungkook's favorite bakery. A small packet of strawberry milk. A scarf they once bought together at a winter market. He never wrote his name, but he knew Jungkook would know. Some nights, he sat in his car across the street, just to watch the faint light flicker in the apartment window. He didn't stay for long, just enough to see that Jungkook was safe, breathing, existing. But every time he drove away, he wondered if Jungkook was happier without him. Jungkook sighed. He noticed everything. The bread. The milk. The scarf. Each item placed quietly, as if the giver was afraid to disturb him. At first, he threw them away, afraid that keeping them would make him fall again. But after a week, the scarf ended up hanging on the back of his chair. The milk was in the fridge. The bread sat in a jar on the counter. Jimin noticed. "You're letting him in, little by little." Jungkook shook his head. "No. I'm just not ready to let him go completely," and that was the truth. Because no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much space he needed, Taehyung was still the only name his heart whispered at night. One night, Taehyung sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. His phone was in his lap, the screen glowing with a blank message box. He wanted to type, "I miss you," but he didn't. Instead, he whispered it to the empty seat beside him, the one where Jungkook used to sit. "I don't know if you'll ever let me back in," he murmured, voice trembling. "But I'll wait. Even if it's forever." The storm outside had eased into a gentle drizzle, but inside Jungkook's penthouse, the tension was still thunder. Taehyung sat on the edge of the couch, his fingers loosely holding the phone he'd just picked up from the coffee table, the one Jungkook had left unlocked in his rush to answer a call. He hadn't been looking for anything. At least, that's what he told himself. But when the screen lit up with a message, curiosity had a way of clawing its way past restraint. It wasn't the name that hurt him. It was the words. "You still thinking about last time?" The air in his lungs turned into ice. His thumb hovered, trembling, as he scrolled. The conversation was old, but not old enough. It was filled with memories that didn't belong to him. Words Jungkook had never spoken to him, touches Jungkook had given to someone else. Taehyung. Jungkook's voice came from behind, sharp but laced with worry. Taehyung didn't answer at first. He just looked up, his dark eyes unreadable. "Who is this?" His voice was low, almost too calm, the kind of calm that comes right before something breaks. Jungkook's expression shifted, the mask of arrogance cracking for just a second. "It's not what you think." Taehyung let out a hollow laugh. "Then tell me what I should think. Because right now, it feels like you've been lying to me this whole time." Jungkook stepped closer, his jaw tense. "That was before us. Before we what?" Taehyung cut him off, standing up so they were face to face. "Before we started pretending this was real? Before I started loving you for real." The rain outside picked up again, as if the sky decided to match the storm in the room. Jungkook reached out, but Taehyung stepped back. "Don't," he warned, his voice tight. "Not unless you're ready to tell me the whole truth." Jungkook's hand curled into a fist at his side. "You want the truth? Then stop running away every time I try to give it to you." For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence was heavy, and it wasn't clear whether the night would end with an explanation or with the sound of a door closing. The evening had settled into an unsettling quiet. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, the kind of steady drizzle that made the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white. Taehyung sat curled up on the couch, his knees drawn to his chest. His phone lay untouched on the coffee table, screen dark, as if both of them had agreed to a silent truce after the storm of earlier days. Jungkook had been in his study for hours. The sound of pages turning, the occasional scrape of a chair, those were the only signs of life from him. It was almost comforting, this silence, until Taehyung heard footsteps approaching. Jungkook emerged from the dimly lit hallway, his expression unreadable. But it wasn't the usual cold mask he wore. No, there was something else. Something softer. He stopped in front of the couch, his gaze scanning Taehyung's face with an intensity that made Taehyung's pulse spike. "Why do you look at me like that?" Taehyung asked quietly, his voice barely above the rain. Jungkook didn't answer right away. He crouched down in front of him, close enough that Taehyung could see the faint shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. "I used to think you'd always stay," Jungkook finally said, voice low, raw. "No matter what I did, no matter how cold I was. I thought you'd never reach a point where you'd walk away." Taehyung's chest tightened. And now Jungkook's lips curved into the faintest, almost broken smile. "Now I'm scared I already lost you." The words hung between them like fragile glass. One wrong move and it would shatter. Taehyung didn't answer. Not yet. But for the first time in weeks, his gaze softened, and Jungkook's hand hesitated in the space between them, before finally brushing against Taehyung's. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was the moment Jungkook's eyes changed, from arrogance to fear, from indifference to something almost desperate. And Taehyung felt it. Deeply. The rain had been falling since afternoon, a soft, steady drizzle that painted the city in shades of silver and shadow. Taehyung was curled up on his couch, wrapped in a blanket, the flickering glow of the TV casting light across his tired face. He hadn't been expecting anyone, especially not him. But the knock came. Firm. Persistent. Almost impatient. Taehyung's breath hitched. He knew who it was before he even opened the door. And there he was, Jungkook. Soaked from the rain, dark hair plastered to his forehead, his black hoodie dripping water onto the hallway floor. His eyes weren't just intense tonight, they were hungry. "Why are you here again?" Taehyung's voice was quiet but trembling, not from fear, but from the way Jungkook's presence seemed to unravel him. "Because." Jungkook stepped closer, water dripping onto Taehyung's socks. "I'm not done with you yet." Taehyung swallowed hard. "We said this was nothing, a mistake." Jungkook's jaw flexed. "You can keep telling yourself that, but you and I both know it's a lie." The air between them thickened, filled with unspoken history and the ache of something they hadn't dared to name. Taehyung should have told him to leave, but instead, he found himself backing up as Jungkook followed him inside, shutting the door with a soft click. The room seemed smaller now. His blanket slipped from his shoulders, and Jungkook's gaze dropped to the buttery skin of his collarbone. "You've been avoiding me," Jungkook said, voice low, almost accusing. "That's because you." Taehyung's words faltered as Jungkook stepped close enough for his warmth to reach him despite the damp clothes. "It's hard to breathe." Jungkook smirked faintly, but there was a flicker of something softer in his eyes. "Then stop holding your breath." Before Taehyung could react, Jungkook's hand was on the back of his neck, pulling him forward. Their foreheads touched, and Taehyung's pulse went wild. "This isn't fair," Taehyung whispered. "I don't want fair," Jungkook murmured. "I want you." The kiss that followed wasn't gentle, it was desperate, soaked in rainwater and longing. Taehyung's knees weakened as Jungkook's other hand slid around his waist, holding him like he'd been waiting years for this moment. When they broke apart, both breathless, Jungkook rested his forehead against Taehyung's again. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. Taehyung didn't. And that was the night everything changed.